First of all, it's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out today. I think it's important that you stay and engage in government. Let me ask one question, because I always love to ask this. How many out there know their senator and their 3 delegates? Raise your hand. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I ask that a lot of times, and people come to Annapolis and they have their business at stake, and they don't have a clue who their delegate or their senators are. This is participatory business. I mean, if you want to stay engaged, you have to at least contact the local legislators that represent you. I just want to give a little different perspective. You know, we start with a general fund budget that's about $14 billion. And we put close to $6 billion in the K-12 education. Now, since we passed Thornton, it's gone from $2.7 billion to $6 billion. So when we talk about for the last 4 years that we've been #1 in K-12 education in the country, it's because we made a pretty significant investment in education. We've made a conscious effort to limit the increase in college tuition. We've gone from the 7th highest to the 23rd highest, as the President of the Senate said. And one of the reasons is, as USA Today pointed out earlier in the year, is that in this recessionary economy, those who have a college degree are likely to have an unemployment rate of 5% or below. Those who have a high school degree will have 10% or below. Those who have neither will be about 15%. Now, there's a reason why Maryland's unemployment rate's about 2 points below the national average. That's because we have the highest educated workforce in the country. It's also the reason we have the highest median income in the country, because with an education, you have the opportunity to go out and have the flexibility to get a high-paying job. And a lot of the manufacturing jobs have left the state, but they've been replaced with research jobs. Right now, Johns Hopkins University gets over $1 billion in research money. It gets more money from NIH than any other medical institution in the country. So every time we put a building up on the Johns Hopkins campus, we fill that with high-paying jobs. University of Maryland medical system and professional schools are in competition as well. College Park. Collectively, they get close to $1 billion. Johns Hopkins, largest employer in the state of Maryland. It's a nonprofit. When people talk about government not creating jobs, go down to southern Maryland and find out whether Pax River made a difference in the jobs down there. BRAC relocation coming here. They're coming here and not to New Jersey because we have an educated workforce. Everybody's all excited about cybersecurity. They're coming here. That's government money providing private sector jobs. Our capital budget, about $1 billion locally and statewide, will go into school construction. That creates about 10,000 private sector jobs in the construction trades. So we try to invest in Maryland. Now, it's tough times, but I take our state over any other state in the surrounding area, probably in the entire country. I think we have in the best position to continue to move forward. Now, my good friend from the Eastern Shore talks about the war in rural Maryland. Now, if the urban areas want mass transit, let them have a taxing authority. Well, it doesn't work in Maryland because right now our education system is set up where we pay counties on a wealth basis. So if you're in Cecil County, which he represents, 67% of the school money for operating expenses comes from the state. Only 33% comes from Cecil County. If you're in Wycomico County, 78% of the money comes from the state. Only 22% from Wycomico County. Montgomery County, the wealthiest and largest county, they only get 37% from the state. The rest comes from them because they're a wealthy county. Now, if I went in and said you have to have a taxing authority for mass transit, they would say, well, why should I underwrite the educational system of all these other counties? And they'd have a legitimate point. The fact of the matter is that we try to create an equitable tax base and an equitable funding base to everyone. We don't limit projects to the Eastern Shore or Southern Maryland, but we try to meet the needs of every area of the state. And I think that's important to do that, and I think it's important for the business community to understand how we go about doing that. So as we go through the budget, and the governor's laid out a budget, it suggests that we pass some of the pension costs on the county governments. It suggests that we take exemptions away from high-income earners. It has a few other things in there. But the fact of the matter is the legislature has that budget for 90 days. If we don't like what the governor's proposed, we can come up with alternatives. You know, we can either cut education, cut Medicaid, we can do all these different things. But those are the alternatives that the legislature will undertake. And certainly the business community is free to come down and suggest things that they'd rather see than what the governor has proposed. There's public hearings that will go on for 90 days. And I'll just say this to go back to the $14 billion budget. $6 billion for K through 12 education, $1.5 billion for higher ed. That's not only for your public universities, your private universities, and your community colleges. If you're counting along, that's about $7.5 billion. It's $3.5 billion for Medicaid, and if you cut Medicaid, you're cutting providers. That means you're cutting your hospitals, you're cutting your nursing homes, you're cutting your doctors and your nurses, because they're the ones that get paid through Medicaid and Medicare. 50% of your hospital coverage is Medicaid and Medicare for their costs, because mostly senior citizens and those who need are in hospitals. So that's $11 billion, about $1.2 billion going to public safety. People want to lock people up, they have to go to correctional facilities, you have to have guards to take care of them. That's all part of a budget that basically is mandated. So you have a little less than $2 billion within there that pays for the rest of the structure of government, including pensions, benefits, things of that nature, which everybody deals with in their business costs. So it's not an easy job. We try to go down there and have an understanding of what makes business work in the state of Maryland. Our goal is to create an atmosphere for an educated, research-based economy. That means investing in education. And if it means investing in transportation to make it easier for businesses to compete here, we want to do that. But I can tell you, there's 141 members of the House of Delegates. There's 43 from the minority party. My good friend, and I'm not saying anything that he wouldn't say, I've wagered that not one member of the Republican Party is going to vote for any transportation initiative. So that means 98 people, you have to get 71 votes. You know, the last 3 years in our budget, our operating budget, we've had one Republican vote for the operating budget in the last 3 years. That's the delegate from Western Maryland. Now, if you're going to vote against $6 billion worth of school money and you're going to vote against all those other things, it's highly unlikely that they're going to vote for the issues in the budget this year. So when I go there and the President and Senate go there, I'm depending on 98 people. He is roughly depending on 35 people. So it's not an easy balance. Unless there's some kind of compromise, it's very tough to go forward. But we will. We can't let what happens in Washington, D.C. take place in Annapolis. So we're here to work with everyone. I just want to give you a little structure and ground rules of what we get to deal with. Thank you very much for having me.